Friends, welcome back to the Bridge Between Us podcast. I have a friend with me today. She's actually been on my other podcast, the Even Wild podcast. And Tiffany, I don't know if you remember this, you probably do, but you were actually one of the key players in getting me into podcasting. That's been quite a few years ago. And so, y'all, I want to welcome my friend Tiffany Baker to the show today. Welcome,
Melinda. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have another conversation with you here today.
Tiffany, tell us just a little bit about yourself before we dive deep into this conversation.
Yeah, hello, y'all. My name is Tiffany Jo Baker, and I live in North Texas with my husband of 23 years. We are just recent empty nesters. Both of our girls are now in college, so we are adjusting to that, and I'm holding ever so tightly to my two fur babies that are still at home with me.
Oh my goodness. So what do you like to do just on an ordinary day when you're not podcasting?
Yeah, on an ordinary day, what I love to do, I love to laugh. I love to take walks during which I often listen to this podcast with Melinda. And you know what? I'm somebody who's adventurous, who likes to try new things once. That's what I say. I like to try new things. I might never do it again, but trying something new or learning something new to me is really fun.
Yeah. What's something new that you've done that just really pops in your head right now?
So this is back when I was 5 years old. My teacher taught me how to crochet. And because I would get done with my work and everybody would still be working, so they had to keep me busy. And so I have gone back to doing hand projects like that, crocheting, embroidery, just something that I can do I don't have to think a whole lot, but I can still, binge watch a show or something at the same time and just completely not have to think a whole lot.
Oh, yeah. I taught myself how to crochet about, oh goodness, it's been almost 6 years ago. We were expecting our first grandchild. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know what, for each of my grands, I want to be able to give them something handmade from me. And so I taught myself how to crochet. I crocheted a blanket for each of our first two grands. And then after that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. So then for the grand number 3 and grand number 4, I taught myself how to sew a special type of blanket. I don't even know the type of the blanket. So then I took it to the sewing machine, but it's still handmade for me. So who knows, with any other grandkids, I may stick with the last 2 types, or I may discover something else new too, but there's something special. Yeah. And I think there's something special about handmade gifts and just the time that goes into it, and just gives you the opportunity to slow down just a little bit and be creative. Our God is creative.
Yes.
So we're creative too. I want us to talk today about core values, as one of the questions I get with parents on this journey is, how do we make decisions that are best for our family during this time? How do we make decisions that are best honor the Lord? And then how do I walk through decision fatigue? I'm so tired of making decisions. I'm so tired of having to stand strong. And it caused me to go back and think about one of our conversations where we talked about the importance of core values. And how those core values, once we have determined our core values, we actually make our decisions based on those core values. And it really helps us to not get caught up in the emotion of what is going on. If we go back to what our core values, the importance of them, and how we can use them to make the best decisions for us, for our children, for our family, and decisions that honor God, I think that is another way to set us up for success. So tell us, what are core values?
Yeah, it's all the things that you said are so important on why we need to have core values. So simply stated, core values are our fundamental beliefs that direct and guide our behavior and our decisions. So it's the things that matter most to us, whether we consciously have them written down or not. It's the things that drive our behavior, those core values, those core beliefs, they become guiding principles. When we're intentional with them, they can become guiding principles so that we're making the best decisions. Like you said, when we're in the heat of the moment, when we're in that place of decision fatigue, or we're in that place of just being exhausted and not being able to do or think of one more thing. When we have intentionally identified what matters most to us, whether that's individually or as a couple, as a family, even as an organization, you then have this framework that you have something to work with. And it also helps you to feel aligned throughout your decisions and throughout your life, because these principles, these values will come to the surface and they will be shown and shared consistently. I think even in the population that you serve, that consistency of our loved ones knowing, no matter what, mom and dad love me. That's one of your core values as a parent, is that love, or whatever it might be for you, what your core values might be, that's what shows up. And that's what gives that safe place, that consistency, that ongoing framework to truly walk out what God has called and created you to be, and how you are to operate in each and every season.
Oh, that's so good. So I want to go back. For many of us, when we hear core values, we're like, what is she talking about? Like, what is a core value? What does it look like? And how do we get to that place? So I would love for us to kind of walk through that and give our listeners everything they need. I want you, listener, to be able to, when you end this podcast, say, okay, I'm going home, or I'm going to find some quiet time and I'm going to sit down and really think about my core values. Give us an example of a core value, as maybe even as a parent, because you're a parent, you're a mom. So what would be some core values as a parent, as a Christian parent?
Yeah, and I can give you what my overarching list is. And so I recommend having 5 to 7 core values. So what are the things that matter most to you? What are the fundamental beliefs and guiding principles that you want to operate in and you want to be shown through your life? So for me, one of them is honesty. That's really important. As a parent, it was very important that I was honest, but also that my children were able to be honest with me. So setting an atmosphere of honesty, which in our house also meant when they lied, it was a I would say almost a double punishment, because we wanted to reinforce honesty in our lives. So honesty is one of them for me. Excellence. Doing the best with what I have. So many of us as parents are time strapped, money strapped, emotional capacity strapped. So I've struggled with perfectionism. I don't want to be perfect, but I do want to be excellent. And excellent is doing the best with what I have. So in that moment, if I have an hour, I'm going to do my best with that hour to use it. So excellence is one of my core values. Generosity. Generosity is something that of heart, generosity of heart. I want to be generous in how I treat people and how I share, not just my material things, but also my emotional quotient and the things that I have to give. So generosity would be one. So those are some examples of what some fundamental beliefs on what's important to you and how those can show up. So the first thing you do is, when you're trying to figure out what core values are, is there's 2 ways you can go about it. You can Google and you can say core values activity, and you'll get a list of words that are potential core values. And you can just read through that list and circle all the ones that hit, all the ones that resonate with your heart. You can do it that way. The second way you can do is kind of make a list of the important areas of your life. So that would be parenting, that would be work, that would be marriage, relationships, mental health, physical health. So think of all those big areas in your life, maybe 6 to 8 areas. And then I want you to think what matters most to you in those spheres, in those areas of your life. what matters most to you as an employee? What matters most to you as a parent? And so maybe that for you is relationship or building relationship. So that's another way to start generating a list of potential core values. And then from there, you're going to start to see, you're going to have this big list, but you're going to start to see themes and patterns that you can then kind of chunk together and eventually compile a list of maybe like 5 to 7. And then from there, what I think is really important too is you have your list of 5 to 7. I like to then just write a simple sentence of how that's going to play out in your life. So another core value for me is laughter and fun. So many of us get so busy, we get in the grind and we don't. And that's so important in relationship building, is to have that lightheartedness, to have laughter, to have fun, and as you're building relationships. And so for me, I could write a simple sentence on how do you want that to show up in your life? And that could be as simple as making sure to leave space in my weekly calendar for fun. So you just write a simple sentence on how you want that to show up. And then the last part, the step 4, would be write these out and hang them up, so that these are the things that start to become intentional. They can become strategic. They sit on your heart, stay there, so that as you're doing your day-to-day, whether it's the heat of the moment, the mundane moments, that you can go back and be like, oh, this is what matters most. Is my life aligning to this? Are my relationships aligning to this list? I think it's so important for all of us for those reminders, because there's so much noise. There's so much coming at us and attacking where we truly need to be and want to be. And so to have a list of core values and how we want them to operate in our life is essential, so we can live a life that matters, and more by design than by default.
That's good, because oftentimes we can look around and be like, wait a minute, how did I get here? Like, this is not what I thought, or this is not what I planned my life or my family to look like. So how did we get here? And even when we live by our core values, it doesn't mean that we're still going to end up in a place where we're like, wait a minute, just because my core values are one way does not mean another member in my family's core values are the same. And so then we have to learn how to come alongside one another, agree to disagree, and come to a place where we still love one another, even though we don't want, or we have the same values and beliefs. So when it comes to core values, I have my core values, my husband has his. We come together, though, to determine our core values in our marriage. Mm-hmm. And then as a family, do you sit down as a family and say, what do we want the core values of our family to look like? Is that how it looks?
Yes, absolutely. So you can do it, like you said, you can do it as an individual. You can do it as a couple, as a family. You can even do it as an organization coming together. And, they talk about successful businesses, and I believe that it's the same for families as well. Successful businesses run because they know what their mission, vision, and purpose is. They are every month bringing it before their people on, this is what our company is. This is who we are. This is how we operate. That's what core values do for family as well. This is who we are. This is what matters most to us, and this is how we operate. So yeah, absolutely. It can be as simple as, you could do it in an hour with your family and sitting down with pizza or whatever, and just be like, hey, because like you said, you want it to be a meshing of everyone on who we are, all the different personalities, all the different likes and desires. But at the end of the day, there's a standard for your family. Like, we're the Bakers. So this is how the Bakers operate, just like being children of God, right? The fruit of the Holy Spirit. This is how Christians operate. Christ followers operate: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, self-control. It's the same thing within our families. This is how the Bakers operate. This is how the Patricks operate. This is what matters most. And we're striving and we're working towards to have this be real in our life and show up bigger in our life. We're not perfect. You know, for some of them, they're aspirational. I want to have more fun. I want to have more lightheartedness in my relationships because this journey is so, so hard. And so some of it is aspirational, but it gives you that place to go back for, and it gives you that place of unity, right? The Bible talks about where there's unity, there's a commanded blessing. So being able to focus on what you all agree on, how powerful is that? Instead of on the things you don't agree on, and being able to operate and function from that place. And maybe you're just at the point as a family where you can only agree on three core values. Go with it. Go with it and let it simmer and let it grow from there.
Often, I know for me, when my daughter first came to me and shared with me her same-sex attraction, it was months, Tiffany, where all I could see was her sin choice. All I could see was how we were different. Mm-hmm. And I remember one day I was like, Lord, I really need to be able to see her through your eyes. I need to see her differently because it affected every single thought about her, every single time I was with her. And as I began to pray for eyes to see her as God sees her, I discovered, wait a minute, we still have a lot of things in common. And I then began to choose, I made a choice to begin to meet her in those areas that we were still alike. And one thing, she loves to cook. And so I signed us up for a cooking class one day. And I think when we sit down and say, hey, especially for those right now who have children that are still living under your roof, I really encourage you to do what Tiffany said. Find out if you already know, order your child's favorite food and sit down and say, hey, you know what? My relationship with you is of utmost importance. Mm-hmm. And I want us to do whatever we can to maintain this. We're not always going to see eye to eye. There may be a lot of things that we disagree on, but let's find the things that we do agree on. And for me, when you were talking just now, the first thing that came to my mind, besides love, we want to love each other in our home. The other thing was respect. Mm-hmm. Every person needs respect in the home. I want to show you respect, and I also want you to show me respect. So how can we come to that middle road and work this out? And I believe also that we'll begin to start conversations. Mm-hmm. And when we sit down and we have that time together, my prayer is that it will soften our hearts towards one another and come to a place where, you know what, we may not have the same core values, but one thing we do have is we are family. We do love and we do want to show respect, and it just kind of brings that unity there. I want to talk about decision fatigue. I get emails and calls from parents, and I understand that. I was the same way. There was a point in this journey where I was like, I am so tired of holding firm to a decision or having to make another decision. Mm-hmm. What does it look like when we take our core values and begin to make decisions based upon that and remove the emotion? Because a lot of times it's the emotional part, right, that wears us out. It's emotional having to keep holding to a hard value in our home, or it's emotional to make a decision that we know our child may not like, and we may fear, the child separating themselves from us. But how does having core values and standing on them and making decisions based upon those, what does that look like, and how does it help?
Yeah, I think what this tool does is I think it gives us the opportunity to pre-decide. It gives us that place of pre-decision, and it almost makes the core values the bad guy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
When you're, it's kind of like as parents, when we're like, when our kids would get in a situation, we gave them permission to say, oh, my parents would not let me do that. Or if my parents find out they're going to kill me, I can't do that. We gave them permission to allow us to be the bad guys. That's kind of what the core values are too, because it becomes this thing, this literal thing in your family to stand on and to stand by. So and because you hopefully have this common language now, you're able to say, because of our core values as our family, we are going to continue to do X, Y, Z. Or because of our core values, we can't do X, Y, Z. So it gives you that place of, also gives you that place of pre-decision where you already know ahead of time. Like you used the wonderful example of the core value of respect, because I respect you and because I respect me. This is what the continued decision is. This is the place that I'm at. So it gives you already that framework and that place of pre-decision that you don't have to do as much work in that heat of the decision fatigue, in the heat of the moment of standing, because you have this bad guy, quote unquote, bad guy. You have this thing that you're standing on that's giving you a backbone. It's literally like this framework that I see as like this backbone to your relationships, to your decisions, to where you're headed in the future, to where you're standing today, so that you have something to stand on. And I think too, especially if you have a loved one who maybe isn't even in the operating in their faith that they used to operate, or that they will come to operate. Sometimes I know when I was going through rebellion as a child, as a prodigal, anytime my parents would say the Bible, I wanted to yell. I wanted to scream, because all of the demonic that was operating in me was fighting against all of the Holy Spirit that was operating in them. And it made me so mad. And yes, we need truth. And yes, we need to speak Bible, but that also can come out through core values, which I think is a less potentially divisive way of speaking of what matters most, because as Christian parents, our core values will most likely have biblical references and verses and situations attached to it.
Oh, that's such a good point, because it is true. We hear the word Bible, and when I was, not walking with the Lord either, and oftentimes our children or our loved one, that's the last thing they want. They don't want to be slapped over what they call being slapped over the head with the Bible. They don't want to hear you share another scripture verse with them. But this is a way to live out our biblical values through core values. And humility, to me, humility is huge in a home. And also living that out in my everyday life, not even with my members of my home, but wherever I am during that day. And so I think that's a great thing, is to take that word, to change that word and say, hey, these are our core values. What is most important to you? I think this is also a great way to open up the conversation with our children or our loved one, because this does cause a lot of tension in relationships. And so perhaps the person you're listening in for today is not necessarily your child. Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a coworker. I think it would be great to say, hey, can we grab coffee? I would love to just hear what your values, what your core values are in your life. I think that would allow that person to feel heard and seen and known, and it may even strike up conversations. It may even give them the thoughts of, wait a minute, I never even thought about core values. What do you mean core values? And it would give you the opportunity to say, hey, well, it's a great way for us to live our lives based on what is important to me. Mm-hmm. And how do I want to be treated, and how do I want to treat others? So I think actually, Tiffany, it's a win-win for everybody. Mm-hmm. It's important for us to hear our loved one's heart, and this gives the opportunity, because your child, believe it or not, your child has core values as well. And it gives us opportunity to lean in and to listen to their hearts. Do you have anything before we close our conversation today? Is there just anything bubbling up that you would love to speak to the listeners?
Yeah, I would just encourage you to be listening for what matters most. While you're in conversation and you're in relationship, how many times have we gotten into arguments or stressful, heated moments? And the thing that we're really fighting about is not the thing we're really fighting about. And so when we start to think core values and what matters most to us, and we go through this process to figure out what matters most to us, we'll also be able to hear what matters most to other people as they're talking. Because so many times the fights are not about the thing we're fighting about. It's about that underlying fundamental belief, guiding principle that they have that was misunderstood, that was hurt, whatever it might be. And so this is a great way, another tool to be able to build that bridge between your children, between your loved ones, because you get to know the heart of them. I think it was Josh McDowell said, rules without relationship leads to rebellion. And so this is just another tool to not only live aligned and to live the most purposeful, fulfilled life that you can, but also to build bridges within relationships because you're speaking towards the heart and the core values of the other people as well.
And I see that as we choose to set our core values as a family, sitting around that table together or wherever you choose to do it, that's again a relationship. It's building a relationship. It's not saying these are our core values and you're gonna stand on them, you're part of our family. It's like, no, every person in the family has a say-so. Every person has a heart. Every person has a need. And so we want to come together as a family. We may not be agreeing on everything right now, but you are still valuable. Your feelings are valuable. And so coming together just really builds that relationship.
I do have a core values exercise, and it's 3 pages that you can get for free on my website. Just go to tiffanyjobaker.com/core-values.
Okay.
And it takes you through those 4 steps that I quickly mentioned here today. And you can do that with your family as you're enjoying a really good meal.
So I will put the link to that in the show notes. And then you can also find Tiffany. Tiffany, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, Tiffany Jo Baker.
I want to go back to something that you said as a core value. And it's something that we lose real quick, very early on in this journey. And that is times of fun and laughter. And so I want to encourage you as listeners to think about the last time you laughed. When is the last time you as a family enjoyed spending time doing something fun together? And I want to encourage you to put that on your priority list right now. It's amazing what laughter does, the endorphins it releases, and just the walls come down. Mm-hmm. We let our defenses down and we're able to talk more easily during that time. Do you have any suggestions there, Tiffany? Because I know you and your family love to have fun together.
Yeah. And even in the same way, core values can be different. Or let's say the family has a core value of love. It might play out different for everybody on how they show love. Same as with laughter. There's actually 9 different types of humor.
Really?
Yes. There's actually 9 different types of humor. And so what is funny to some people might not be funny to other people. So in your relationship building, figure out what's funny to them. What, me, it's stupid, witty humor, or it's like people falling, which I should not laugh when people fall, but sometimes I fall. And so it's different for everybody. And sometimes that could just mean, pulling up on YouTube a funny thing of people falling, or a comedic movie, or, instead of when you make a mistake, getting upset with yourself, laughing, teaching others that, that was humorous. I just did whatever. I just found my laundry in the oven, whatever it might be,
yeah.
Just setting the stage of not everything being so serious and laughing. So I think, again, just figuring out what's funny to your family members And, just like we would, our husband hobbies might be different than us. And then we'll go, my husband's a hunter, so I've gone hunting with him. In the same way, as you're building a relationship, join in the humor of your loved one as you're continuing on this journey as well.
Well, I just learned something new today. Then I knew there were, we hear about the 5 love languages, but I have never heard that there were 9 languages of humor. So I'm going to have to check that out. That would be a fun conversation as a family to get together one night and say, hey, let's figure out what each other's laughter or your humor language is. And just like with the love languages, it's a great tool to help when you are cultivating a relationship in your family, because I've learned that the way I like to show love is more than likely the way I like to receive love. But so my husband is acts of service, and I am not acts of service. I am time and words of affirmation. And so I have to be very intentional when he's out working in the yard to go out there and give him a glass of water, take him a snack or something, even though in my mind, I'm like, he's an adult. He knows when he's thirsty. He can come in.
Yeah,
he can come in and pick himself something to drink. But knowing his love language is acts of service, that really helps me to be intentional to meet him where he is. And knowing our kids' love language is a great way to spend time with them. Or maybe time isn't their love language, but maybe words of affirmation are, or gifts and acts of service. What's the other one? Touch is one also. So, wow. Well, Tiffany, thank you so much for joining me today on the Bridge Between Us podcast. I believe that this is really going to help a lot of parents.
This has been wonderful. Thank you, Melinda.
You're welcome. Okay, friends, I want to encourage you to share this podcast with at least one other person. You don't even have to have a child or a loved one who has embraced an LGBT community. This podcast, knowing our core values, is important for every person, regardless of what we're walking through. And then if you have not subscribed to the podcast, I want to make sure that you have done that. That way you get any new episodes coming in, you'll be alerted for that. And then I want to remind you that God has entrusted this journey to you. As you engage with Him, He will equip you for each next step. I'll talk to you next week, friends.